Good afternoon to you. From the EFF leader to Pravin Gordhan, and also throwing down the gauntlet as far as various media institutions are concerned.
Without a doubt, Jeremy, that address by Julius Malema is still underway. He's been talking in the last few minutes, basically challenging President Cyril Ramaphosa to declare, in his words, to call a media briefing and declare every person that donated to his campaign to be elected president of the ANC, because in the words of Julius Malema, they have the list, they know the people who donated to that particular campaign, also slamming the whole process of donations to an individual candidate for leadership, saying that, you know, it's one thing to talk about political party funding. Even we in the EFF, according to Malema, even we in the EFF receive funding, and you're always telling us about receiving funding from people in the cigarette business and cigarette smugglers. But that's different from an individual receiving, personal funding for their personal campaign, and basically saying Pravin Gordhan, Cyril Ramaphosa are rotten. They're as rotten as former President Jacob Zuma. So that's been really the theme of Julius Malema's address. Of course, you'll remember where he started by basically responding to the suggestion that what they are doing, the pressure they are putting on Pravin Gordhan at the moment, is perhaps some kind of a fight back by a faction in the ANC, or perhaps it's somehow linked to that. Julius Malema rejecting that, saying that they are not a fight back of the Jacob Zuma faction, and instead that he's all along stood opposite from Pravin Gordhan. The only time they sort of seemed to be on the same side was when Jacob Zuma was president, because the feeling at the time was that an enemy of my enemy is my friend, and therefore they had to collaborate effort at that time to sort of stand against Jacob Zuma. But he says he's always been clear that Pravin Gordhan, in his words, is a proxy and a dog of white monopoly capital, and therefore Julius Malema saying, let's hit the dog hard so that the owner of the dog, in this instance, according to him, being white monopoly capital, can come out.
Thulasizwe, inside the venue itself a little earlier today, Pravin Gordhan, as expected, scathing as far as the Gupta family is concerned, speaking about a wedding invitation to the infamous wedding that ended up in the wastepaper basket, also saying that he was not for sale. Again, very much going to script, but more and more of that jigsaw puzzle that he was referring to yesterday is slowly starting to assemble.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. A few takeouts for me from today, from Pravin Gordhan's testimony today. One was that whole issue around how many times he, quote-unquote, met the Guptas. And then secondly, there was the issue around Pravin Gordhan talking about the version of events that has been put forward by Mcebisi Jonas that I thought was critical. This was the first corroboration of Mcebisi Jonas's version of events by Pravin Gordhan. So quickly, on the question of whether or not he met with the Guptas, Pravin Gordhan stating a number of times, Jeremy, that he has absolutely never met the Guptas in a one-on-one situation or in any kind of situation that could be described as a meeting. He says he's been in situations where they were also present. So he cited, for example, the TNA business breakfast meetings that would be hosted by the TNA media group, ANN7, as well as the SABC, that they would be in the same room because as ministers they were expected to sort of support the president at the time, President Jacob Zuma, and also says there was an instance where he attended a test cricket match where the Guptas, one of the Gupta brothers, may have been in the vicinity in the presidential box, and he says, well, you know, according to one of his family relatives, Pravin Gordhan, quoting him and saying that, well, even ice cream vendors attend cricket matches. Can they be said to have met the Guptas? Where he was clarifying now, Jeremy, was an instance where he says he met a billionaire from India, where he says that meeting took place in 2010. He says he was asked a question, a written question in Parliament, whether he had met the Guptas, and he gave that unequivocal answer that he has never met the Guptas in a formal meeting. And then later on, he says, after he had given that response, Dondo Mokhajane of Treasury then came back, and said, it's quite possible that at the meeting that you held with this businessman from India, one of the Gupta brothers may have been present at that particular meeting. He says the meeting itself was so insignificant that Pravin Gordhan says he doesn't remember any of these Gupta brothers being present at that particular point. And so he says he'll be writing to the Speaker to say, look, this has been pointed out to me that it may have been possible that one of the Gupta brothers was present at that particular meeting, but it certainly cannot be said that I met with the Gupta brother. I actually met with this businessman from India, and I don't recall the Gupta brother being present in that room. And of course, the other issue that stood out for me was the corroboration of the version of events of Mcebisi Jonas around the meeting with the Gupta brothers.